there, health and wellness fans. Welcome to episode 2 of the YCast podcast that's reinventing how men think about their health and wellness and their life. I'm Tony LaRosa. Sitting next to me, this handsome human is my partner and co-founder of Project Y, Rob Davidson. Rob, we have a great show tonight. What do you think?
We do have a great show. I'm excited about the show tonight. We're going to learn a lot about weight loss and ways to minimize any muscle loss when you're trying to lose weight. So it's going to be exciting. And we have a great guest coming.
Yeah, we do. We are talking tonight about a specific drug, amongst other things, GLP-1 drugs, which is, taking the industry by storm. I know a lot of people that are on it. So I know we're going to expand into that. But before we do, I wanted to follow up with everyone who was on the show, episode 1 last couple weeks ago. We talked about stress management. So I just wanted to give a shout out to everyone. Thank you for being on. And keep in mind, we're here to help you guys. So anybody has any questions, follow up, let us know how you're doing. If any of our techniques helped you, we'd love to hear it. We love the feedback is always great for us. So we definitely want to talk and start. And why don't you give
and any additional questions, right?
Yeah.
Mention that any other questions that we did not tackle, we could tackle on a later episode too. We plan on doing that. So that's going to be kind of our motto, to go back and go over things that we've talked about in the past. So
yeah, we're definitely going to rehash some stuff. Obviously, because like for instance, tonight's topic, there's a new drug coming out every week.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
GLP-1 agonist is what they're called.
And let me ask a dumb question, Rob.
Sure.
What is GLP?
Well, GLP-1 is a receptor site in the pancreas.
Okay.
I'm not going to get too scientific, but it's a receptor site that actually will release more insulin, which takes down your blood sugar, right?
Right.
And it actually limits the amount of glucagon, which is sugar, that it will release. Okay, so basically, by regulating that, it can create less, appetite, because it's actually signaling the brain. And but there's some there's benefits and there's some risks to it as well, just like any drug.
Yeah.
And we'll get deeper into it, but it works based off of insulin and glucagon.
Yeah, but it is, from what I know, I mean, it is a hormone in your body.
It is, yeah. It's a peptide. It's actually a peptide. Peptides are hormone-like. But yes.
And that's my other question, because I want to get too far. I want to break these down because, these things are very easy for you to understand. But if you could also, so it's for GLP, glucagon-like peptide.
Right.
Just so everyone knows what the initials mean.
Yeah.
Also, what is a peptide? If you can.
Yes, I can. Chemistry class a little bit?
Yeah.
Yeah. So peptides are just a chain of amino acids, a long chain, short chain of amino acids.
Mm-hmm.
Could be anywhere from, dipeptide to tripeptide to 100 peptides. So basically that's what they are. They're long and short-term amino acids, but short chain amino acids. So
yeah, I was surprised too, because, I think anybody that has been in fitness and, working out or taking supplements, you're taking amino acids pretty much all the time.
Absolutely.
And you really don't know what the heck these things do. A lot of us, I can say myself for a while, but it's amazing to understand how they trigger messages in your body to help with many things. I mean, please, add to the list, but, obviously recovery is a big thing.
Yeah.
I'm reading a lot about, I think it's, correct me if I'm wrong, TB 500.
Yeah.
Because a new drug out there that people are taking for enhanced recovery.
Lean muscle.
Yeah.
Recovery,
yeah. And to give like a comparison, like a layman comparison, I would say is, it almost has the effect of like if you were to take a steroid where, you're doing all these supplements, nothing's working, then you take a steroid, and oh my God, like, things happen like real fast. And aminos, they can be dangerous. You have to, really take them with caution. But at the end of the day, they're, from what I'm reading is for the most part, they're safe.
Yeah.
but they do wonders.
Yeah, they do, and a lot of the aminos that are sold as supplements come from natural food products as well.
Yeah.
So I mean that's important to know, like
Yeah.
leucine and glutamine and things like that. So and creatine is a great product as well. But amino acids have been around, and then peptides are basically chains of amino acids. The
Yeah.
problem with peptides is you really can't take those orally. Because they do break down in the gut and they destroy the actual amino acid chain. So that's why they typically inject it, and we'll talk about that as well with our guest.
Okay. Yeah, and then also we probably want to touch on can you take them orally with an orally absorbed delivery? Is that
Yeah, I mean,
possible?
there's definitely technology in the works to be able to deliver these types of peptides orally and buccally.
Yeah, which we do, by the way.
Right, we do that. We work with that type of technology, but they are difficult, and to get the same levels of peptide without degradation, which means it being denatured or destroyed, is difficult. It's complex, but we can definitely do it. And it's pretty near future, actually.
Yeah, I would also say, just so everybody is aware of what we're talking about as far as these drug goes. You guys know, you've seen it on TV, you've heard it about a million times. Ozempic is a semaglutide. It's probably the number one known drug right now. Well, not right now, but it was probably the initial. Although
it was the initial.
Yeah. Although I was reading, Rob, that the first released GLP drug was in 2005 by the name Byetta,
which was
exenatide.
for type 2 diabetes originally. Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe if you can touch on that, because everyone, when you talk about like erectile dysfunction drugs, people don't realize like that drug was initially for hypertension, correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then they find new things about these drugs as they're using them. And then
beneficial side effects.
Beneficial
I like to call those.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah. So I can definitely go into that. These GLP-1 products have been basically designed for type 2 diabetes, diabetics, and or pre-diabetics really too. Pre-diabetics was a big industry. And as they were actually giving them and treating patients, they found that there was a tremendous amount of weight loss.
Mm-hmm.
And so they started looking into that. And they first sold it off label for weight loss, and then they got it approved as a weight loss product. And now it's one of the largest. It is the largest, I think, selling products in category in the industry currently.
Yeah. If I hear that theme song one more time,
exactly. Yes,
I'm going to pull my hair out that I don't have.
Wegovy. Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
No, the Ozempic one.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Okay. The Ozempic one too. There's a Wegovy.
Ozempic.
Yeah. Exactly.
But I'm glad you mentioned that. So the other popular ones, the ones that are out there right now, you see on TV or being advertised, Ozempic, Wegovy, Rybelsus, all semaglutides.
Yeah.
Then the other ones, I know we can dive into this a little more later in the show, but the new ones that are getting a lot of traction because I think they do something else. So Zepbound and Mounjaro, sorry, are tirzepatides.
Right. That's correct.
And they are GIP agonists.
Mm-hmm.
And I know they do a little different in the gut, how they treat, metabolize, and how they treat your digestive.
Yeah, that's true.
Which
how it slows down the intestinal flow.
Yeah,
and it keeps you full longer.
Appetite control.
So appetite control is key for that. And so there's good and bad with that. And our specialist, our guest tonight, will talk about that. But you're right. There's a little difference. They also have a longer half-life. So it works a little longer with a lower dose if you're controlling it the right way.
Yeah. So GIP, just so you guys know, gastric inhibitory polypeptide agonist, increases insulin sensitivity, like you said. And basically what happens is the mechanism is your food will be digested more slowly with the GIP agonist.
Yeah, exactly.
Opposed to Ozempic, which is the GLP-1 agonist, increases insulin secretion, and the food leaves your stomach more slowly.
Right. That's exactly right.
So they're finding that you know, the tirzepatide is super popular now.
Yeah.
I think people are acclimating to that drug a little better now, and the side effects are a lot less.
Less, yeah. It's less, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. At least so far, right?
Yeah,
But yeah,
yeah.
it's less, no question.
And then I also was looking at the dosing, and I know the dosing is very small, so it's good for you know, you don't have these large dosages like some other you know, drugs that we're taking.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think is it 5 milligrams?
You know, for these, or
Yeah, for the tirzepatide.
basically they titrate it based on,
Yeah.
you know, so
Yeah.
it goes low to high. So basically,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah, which is good because I think the especially with the tirzepatide, I know that they give you like God, I think I forget what they call it, but it's an initial dose of 2.5 milligrams, and then like you said, they titrate it up.
yeah, that's right, yeah, and you know, everyone does it differently. You know, certain doctors will do different dosing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we definitely can ask our guest that one.
Our guest,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Well, it's probably a good time.
Yeah.
Let's introduce him, Dr. Rahul Dixit, gastroenterologist, who also a good friend and one of the best doctors out there. Rob, I'll let you, you know, talk a little bit
Yeah,
more.
no,
and
he's
then
a great guy. You know, we go back for some time now, right? How you doing?
Good, man.
How was
are
that
you guys doing?
drive?
Good.
Thanksgiving drive, right? Or
Yeah.
pre-Thanksgiving?
Mist and, the rain.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm glad to be here.
Good.
You
Yeah, glad to hear.
look, he
Yeah.
comes still in his scrubs. I love
he,
it.
he
I
had
know.
he had something like
I had some stool on me. But
he had some 18 procedures before he got here. So we thank you for coming.
Of
That's for
course,
sure,
of
especially the
course.
day before Thanksgiving.
yeah. For you guys.
But this is apropos because if you think about it, weight loss, obesity, big meals tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
So people
Yeah.
probably want to know, how do we lose weight and
Yeah.
make it more effective?
Well, and you know,
Yeah.
and let me just say, as far as Dr. Rahul is concerned, you know, it's not solely about weight loss. I
Yeah.
mean, he deals with the gut and all the bad things, and I know I've got a sensitive stomach. I always have.
Yeah.
My son has a very sensitive stomach. He always has. So it's beneficial. If you've never been to a gastroenterologist, I highly recommend. You know, if you're having any stomach issues as you get older, you know, IBS, or if you think you're, you know, gluten intolerant or any of that stuff, you know,
Or
definitely
just intolerant.
intolerant.
Yeah,
You know,
right,
just
whatever.
if you hate people,
Yeah. Just go to a
gastroenterologists
gastroenterologist.
are
Very good. Yeah.
very good for that.
If you're from New York and
Yeah,
still
New York,
recovering
yeah,
from the
yeah.
loss,
Hey.
Yes,
You see how big this guy is?
you work out, Rob?
No, never. So yeah, so
What-
and he also has, if you don't mind me jumping
Sure,
in,
go ahead.
you know, Rahul, Dr. Dixit, he's basically in health and wellness. He actually looks at not just, you know, prescription drugs, but also natural ways to handle things. That's what I love about you, by the way. When we talk, and we've worked on projects together, you're always looking at, well, what about this and what about that? Not looking at what the fast fix is or that magic bullet.
Right.
Which is kind of what we're talking about tonight, a little bit, the magic bullet with GLP-1s.
Sure.
Sort of, but there's, you know, risk and reward to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, let
And
me
you-
ask. Well, no, I was going to say, why don't you,
Yeah,
if you
that's
want,
what I was
just
saying.
kind of give a little
Sure.
background
Of
of
course.
where you are and that you're a real doctor and
Yeah.
we're not just
Yeah.
suiting up our janitor.
Yeah. Thanks
Yeah.
for cleaning the bathroom.
Oh yeah, thank
It's
you.
really
Thank
nice.
you. I know. I do clean a lot. But so thanks, guys. So appreciate having me on. So my
Yeah.
background: internal medicine, GI, liver, pancreas, endocrine system is greatly involved in that as
Yeah.
well. You know, grew up on the East Coast, the best city around, Baltimore.
Yeah.
And
Ravens.
yeah, that's right, and Orioles. Don't forget that.
Yeah.
But trained all over. My background: I was born in India, came here when I was 5, and so the kind of holistic, Ayurvedic, natural
Yeah.
treatment options, and really, I mean, the natural way. I mean, now we're learning more and more about drugs and what's in them, and you know, you treat one side effect with another drug. So I think going back to the original roots, I mean, 80% of all medications have a plant base.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so I think it's important to remember that. And the quick fixes are always there. And for some people, it works. But I think if you look at the basics, for men, women, but especially for men, I think as we age, a lot of hormones, our testosterone, everything starts going down. That affects our motility.
Mhm.
So from esophagus to stomach to colon, everything starts slowing down. We tend not to discuss this as openly as for women's hormone replacement,
right.
but it's a critical part. And in the past 5+ years, we've seen this new category of drugs, as you guys talking about the GLPs, and I can dive into that.
Yeah,
give you my opinion.
Yeah, I'd love to. I mean, you've seen a lot of patients on it, so
Yeah,
I think
I
that would
mean,
be
I've
perfect.
a lot of patients,
Yeah.
and so I'll come off the bat and say it has literally saved some of my patients'
Yeah,
lives.
sure.
Wow.
And one of the biggest things that we're dealing with is fatty liver. So fatty liver, it used to be called NASH, non-alcoholic,
Non-alcoholic, right?
non-alcoholics,
Mhm.
hepatitis.
Yeah.
It's now called MASH, MASH. So
Mhm.
that's a metabolic.
Interesting. They
So
changed.
they changed the name,
Yeah.
and it is now the #1 cause of liver cancer in the world.
Mhm.
Number 2 for cirrhosis for men, and #1 in the world for women.
Yeah.
So I'm seeing, in the past 10 years, and my training also internal medicine, GI,
Yep.
and then also did a hepatology fellowship as well at Johns Hopkins, and internal medicine at Case Western.
Yeah, small little school.
Yeah, and and my GI fellowship at University of Miami. So
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah.
So privileged to have trained by some of the best in the world,
Yeah.
and taking care of some amazing people in all these towns.
Mhm.
And back, when I was in training, we would have patients come in with what we call cryptogenic cirrhosis. So cirrhosis of unknown origin. They don't have any autoimmune diseases, they're not
Mhm.
drinking alcohol, but they end up with full-blown
Yep.
cirrhosis.
Mhm.
So now we're learning the majority of those patients were actually fatty liver.
Yeah.
And it's so
if I can ask real
yeah,
quick,
sure.
doctor. So so you're saying that there is no cause for that other than fatty liver. There's no past use of alcohol or drugs. Is that the case?
Exactly.
Because I think my dad passed from cirrhosis and wasn't from alcohol, or hadn't done drugs since he was 18. But
Sure.
so
Yeah, I mean, as long as there's a full rule out where we rule out iron overload, copper overload,
Right.
autoimmune diseases. But if that's all been ruled out, then liver biopsy back in the day, now there's a lot of non-invasive
Right.
measures to look for it. But it's very possible.
Yeah.
So we group diseases in this metabolic disorder, right? So high blood pressure, diabetes, obesity, sleep apnea. And
well, they all
dyslipidemia.
play together too.
Yeah.
If you look at it, right? I
Yeah.
mean, obesity to diabetes and sleep apnea, they're basically together in a lot of ways, right?
100%. And as you said, Rob, there's a lot of unknown,
right?
And I hate saying this to patients. They're like, "Oh, this guy doesn't know,"
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of research on this
Sure.
going on, and
Sure.
so I'll have people who are skinnier than us.
Mm-hmm.
When I get an ultrasound, they have severe fatty liver,
Right?
Yeah.
but
right.
they're not, the quote fat, that
Right.
you would think, but they have fatty liver. So and I have some patients who are not even obese, and I hate using the BMI because, I mean, Rob, you're probably obese.
I'm
right?
obese
But,
considering, because of the, it
So-
doesn't take lean muscle.
Exactly. So that's I don't like to use that term, but unfortunately we, still kind of
of course,
the basic way for grouping patients. But the reason I brought this up is that, our goal is preventative, right? So if somebody's gaining weight, we're getting blood work and we're getting ultrasounds or MRIs of the liver, and they're saying, hey, you're starting to get stage 2, 3 fibrosis. Right. So stage 4 is considered cirrhosis.
Yeah.
And so what can we do to reverse that? Because the liver, can't reproduce forever. There's a certain point of point of no return.
Yeah.
And so that's what I tell patients. And, I've been dealing with alcoholism is, you don't want me to get started.
That's probably number one.
It's a big topic, and I can go down this, at another time. But so so when I tell a patient, hey, you have stage 3, this is pretty bad. We're getting really close. I mean, we got to make some real life changes. And so it's like either diet, exercise, really, dialing into your food plan and your exercise regimen,
Yeah.
or you're going to get a liver transplant.
Right.
Mhm.
A lot of my patients would be like, okay, wait, sorry, give me those options again.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and I'm saying that because it's hard, right?
Yeah.
You have a lot of people that we know have genetics where
Yep.
it's hard for them to lose weight.
Yeah.
And, they get on all the diet plans and food plans and they're just not able to.
Yeah.
So the GLPs are actually nice in that they've been able to help those patients because now it allows them to start losing weight and they're actually now seeing results. So I think they definitely have their place.
Yeah.
And there's some data showing that they also have anti-inflammatory effects.
I've seen that. Yeah.
And,
yeah, very much so.
my colleagues at some of the big institutions here, for example, in the heart transplant, pre-heart transplant ward, they're now giving patients on the list GLPs because it significantly lowers their inflammation and significantly lowers their cholesterol.
Right.
So we're seeing, it's FDA approved for diabetes. Right. And then we realized that, hey, there's a secondary endpoint that is not approved for, but, to help lose weight. Unfortunately, it's really taking on this stance of, trying to help lose weight.
Well, it's become the magic bullet, right? I mean, everybody out there is doing it, even if they're 10 pounds overweight. And they're
and there's concerns about that. And, these drugs have side effects, right? So we have to be aware that, 30, this is my own personal experience. About 30+% patients will have some nausea, some acid reflux, worsening constipation.
No one cares.
Yeah.
They're losing weight.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
and I mean, I've turned patients away from it. I said, look, I'm not going to prescribe it because you have XYZ, issues. And, they'll be able to get it. Now they can order it online and, get it from.
Well, the other thing is the visceral fat.
Yeah.
Correct. Because I know that's terrible, especially as you get older for men.
Well, fat is pro-inflammatory.
Yeah.
There's no,
that's
if you
why
look
it's
at
reducing it.
Yeah.
That's why it's reducing inflammation.
And exactly. So we now know that fat is linked with 12+ cancers. It is really pro-inflammatory. So there's, North America is one of the most obese countries, continents in the world. It is also now the USA, also one of the highest cancer, the highest cancer rates.
Absolutely.
So,
it's
and I don't think that's coincidental.
Even worse than that. I mean, stats are showing that by 2030, 1 billion out of 8 billion of the populace will be obese.
Yeah.
1 billion. That's a huge percentage.
Well, I mean, and it's even deep rooted, right? So, people are not moving as much compared to European countries, walking,
they walk after dinner or whatever.
Yeah. And just being mobile, right?
Yeah.
So you have the birds and, you have all these things where people can just move quicker.
Yeah.
And so people are not as active. Portions are huge. If you go to any major restaurant chains, you'll see these gigantic portions.
Without a doubt. Yeah.
So I think it's we have to look at ourselves as a society and, what we're eating, how we're eating, how often we're eating, how large we're eating.
Processed foods too. I mean, you go to Europe and you order a McDonald's hamburger or French fry, and then you order one here. And they have all the processed, hydrogenated oils and beef juice and whatever else in the fries here.
Right.
There, you're getting cut fries that are fresh.
Right.
That's what you're getting. And there's a big difference there.
So let me ask this question because you're probably the perfect person to ask is, I always hear, and I've even said it myself, is like, in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, you grew up and, the food was better and, everyone's talking about the additives, preservatives and food now. Like, what is your take on that whole idea that the food today is tainted and it's making, not to get any conspiracy theories or anything like that, but just your perspective on ingredients and how we're processing things. And do you feel it is making a contributing to that?
Sure. Yes. I mean, I think there's definitely, we need a lot more data on it, but it's concerning when certain countries ban certain fillers and food colors.
Yeah, I was going to
and we don't.
Yeah.
And it's
So-
been shown. I mean, I mean, we need more
Yeah.
studies, but there's been a lot of
Yeah.
studies showing some of the processed foods that we use,
Yeah.
some of the ingredients, they're causing problems.
Yeah.
They
Well, I
absolutely-
think one of the biggest indicators would be early onset of some of these things.
Yeah.
Like, we have kids now, like 17, 18, 19, having like IBS and like all these
Yeah.
gut problems at a
Yeah.
younger age.
Right. I mean, I think,
That's a good
if you
point.
look at just childhood obesity,
Mhm.
Yeah.
right? Childhood obesity in the US is sky high.
Yeah.
And so that's a great, that's a snapshot of
I blame
kids.
technology.
Yeah.
I do.
Well, I mean, see,
I
and
blame
that
computers and
comes
technology,
and
yeah.
that comes into sitting around,
Yeah.
not being
No, it's
active.
sedentary,
I
yeah,
mean,
sedentary lifestyle.
we've talked about our
Yeah,
kids, like,
without
okay,
doubt.
so keeping them active is critical.
Well, also,
Um,
you'd have to say now, after the generations, is probably like a genetic thing at this point, too, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, I've seen patients who and I've heard from people with the younger, generation, the gamers, and and I
Yeah.
think they're definitely just playing and sitting around and not moving as much compared to growing up
exactly.
for us, like basketball and baseball and
But it's interesting. There's some research going on about this. So does that mean that next generation that they'll be predisposed to being fat again because did they change their genetic code a little bit?
it's possible.
I mean, that's what I'm saying, right?
Yeah, no,
Because
it's
you're
possible, yeah.
basically teaching, right?
Yeah.
Your cells, and fat cells actually they do have memory, by the way. They come back, right?
Yeah.
They definitely know. But down the line, down your lineage, does that change your genealogy?
It's very possible.
It's possible.
It's very
That's
possible.
another
Yeah.
show we can talk
Yeah,
about.
yeah.
But it's pretty
No, no.
interesting to me.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think,
No. We need an
okay.
anthropologist.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I think we need to address that, and I think if you just go head to head and compare to different countries, the processed food
Yeah.
versus natural.
No doubt.
We're all about losing weight quickly. My whole thought process has always been sustainability.
Yeah.
Right. When if it comes to dieting,
Yeah, moderation,
exercise,
sustainability.
moderation, but like I have patients who are on Atkins diet and keto diet, and they lose that 20 pounds right away. But they're increasing the risk of kidney stones, they're increasing the risk of fatty liver.
Yeah.
So and then they'll gain it back.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
So,
typical.
right?
I mean,
Yeah.
That was
it
one
should
of the
be
things.
lifestyle, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was one of the things I wanted to ask too is, what have you seen with your patients, which I know you're getting into now, is like sustainability.
Yeah.
Because I know myself sometimes, like if I'm, getting in shape to do something or, losing a few pounds or whatever the case, I feel like, oh, I could eat now.
Yeah.
Or I can eat this thing that I wouldn't normally eat it. So I think like people may be using their weight loss as an excuse to kind of jump back on and eat what they can and try to beat the process.
Yeah, I mean, I think the concept of cheat day,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
cheat week, cheat
Yeah.
weekend, it's that then goes a little bit too far.
Too far, yeah.
The GLPs, going back to them
Yeah.
quickly, one of the biggest issues I've seen is that people forget to eat.
Yeah. I've heard
So
that too. And
they
then-
just, now you're
So yeah, I want to know.
No,
I
jump
love
in.
the direction you're going. And Keith, if you
I'm
have,
Italian, that doesn't happen.
if you have, Keith is our producer, by the way. We should have introduced you. But do you have the JAMA study that you can just pull up on the website or on the screen?
You want me to
Basically, just show if you could show it. I don't know if you can, but not that the study. It's okay though if you don't have it. So basically, people taking tirzepatide lost an average of nearly 50 pounds in less than a year, but gained more than half of it back once they stopped taking the drug. Right?
Yeah.
Not only that, there's a tremendous amount of muscle loss.
Yes.
When taking GLP-1s. So just a question, and you'll know better than I do, but from metabolism standpoint, I should say, does that not flip it on its head? I mean, you're going off, you lost weight, you gain all the fat back, but you don't gain the muscle back.
Right.
That seems like it would lower and flip your metabolism to being even worse.
Well, the ketotic stage, right? So when we're trying to burn fat, and so when you're starving, I mean, that's pretty much what ketosis is.
Exactly.
So you're starving, so your cells are, so now it's starving, it's getting the fat off, but then you don't eat.
Right.
So your body needs
Energy.
nutrition, needs energy.
So it needs muscle.
And so then it starts eating muscle. And then people are like, oh my God, I've lost my weight and I'm feeling great. My snoring's gone. My cholesterol is getting better. I'm going to now, get off of it. And so it is a real it's a brain,
Yeah,
you know, the
yeah.
brain gut connection.
Yeah, definitely. without
And
doubt.
you know, the positive, the benefits of using some of these compounded products, you know, you can actually micro dose or titrate.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
were talking
yeah,
about
yeah.
that. Yeah.
And I think there is a benefit for some patients about that because, you know, right now it's you click, you know, you got the pen that
Yeah,
clicks, and
it's
you
easier to-
can't really move.
You can't microdose that.
You can't microdose
as
that.
much
So
as compounded.
there are patients who are very
Right.
sensitive to it,
Yeah.
and you can't go below the lowest dose.
Correct. Right.
And then the whole concept of like, well, do I need to be on every week? So, you know, every patient's different, right? Everyone's unique.
Yeah.
And some patients need to go on the max dose and then they finally start seeing some results or minimal results. Other people can barely even handle the lowest dose and they
Right.
start getting severe side effects.
Right.
So
Yeah.
everybody's different. I think the metabolism is the key, and everyone's metabolism, from ethnic, male, female, as men, as we age, our metabolism slows down.
Without doubt. Yeah.
So I think, you know, being aware of that and knowing that, hey, just because my neighbor or my brother or my nephew, you know, my best friend lost so much weight on this, I know I can lose this much weight too.
Yeah.
So, and I agree, a lot of people think it's the silver bullet and
Right.
say, hey, I don't need to exercise anymore. Hey, I don't need to do this. I don't need to do that. But it comes with some risk.
That was
I
my
mean,
next question, actually. Do you tell your patients, if they are on it, to at least do strength training, some exercise, resistance, to help keep lean muscle when they're doing it?
Absolutely. I mean, you know, it has to be a team.
Yeah.
A team approach.
Right.
So, I mean, I do a lot of, you know, what I call, and I've formed my institute, Metabolics
Yes.
Institute,
Yeah. Yeah.
where we're focusing on this.
Right.
And I work with great nutritionists as well, who I've known for
I
over
happen
a
to know him.
decade.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's awesome.
Yeah.
One of the best, yeah.
And so we approach it and together because you know, the nutrition has to be there.
It has to be.
And so you know, there people are vegetarian who don't eat meat and or will eat fish. So everyone, you have to be able to kind of base it on a science, and
Yeah.
and that's what, you know, Phil Golia
Yeah,
does.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned the titrate and the dosing. So
Yeah.
I was telling Rob before the show, I was watching a YouTube video of this woman who and she opened the show in her podcast. She was saying, look, everybody's different. But what I did was I was able to, you know, I think they open you up with like a 2.5 milligram tirzepatide.
Yeah.
I'm speaking of, and she kept it at that. And then I think they go from 2 to 2.5 to titrate up to 5.
Yeah.
And she never did that. She did the 2.5 for 4 months, lost like 30 or 40 pounds, I forget. And then she actually, I know you're talking about the pen, but she said she did half of that, went to 1.25 after that for the remaining months, and she still lost like another 4 to 10 pounds. So again, it's really works differently for different people. Everyone was different.
Yeah. I mean, look, you know, like a lot of these meds, you know, you want to stay on it for the rest of your life.
Right.
And pharmaceutical companies will love that.
Yeah, yes, they
of
will.
course.
Yeah.
You know, keep stay on for.
Yeah.
And, you know, I mean, we talk about autoimmune diseases, and, you know, and there are a lot of these great drugs, biologics that are out
That
there.
They have to stay on.
But, you know, then you have to stay on it. But for this, it's like, you know, at what point do you say, I have trained my brain, or my brain has trained itself to tell my stomach, you're done.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And so that's where I think the key is. And I think, you know, it's like when I try to get a patient off of Nexium,
Yeah,
you know, they've been on it for 10 years.
Yep.
I'm not going to be like, oh, okay, get off. You're
Right.
done.
Yeah.
You're going to have rebound reflux. Then they're like, oh my God, I can't freaking get off this stuff. And you got to go right back on it. And so it's about titrating and then coming to the notion that, okay, I can get off of this drug. I'm not going to have my rebound acid reflux. So, you know,
that makes a lot of sense.
Once you get to your target goal and you're like, wow, I'm eating again, I'm actually healthy, now I can start tapering down. And, you know, and everyone's a little bit different. You know, some people are like, hey, I want to go on a lower dose, but I need to stay it every week. I've had some patients say, you know what, and I don't recommend this, you know, that patients start playing around themselves.
Themselves,
you know, they're like, oh, well, okay, maybe I should just do it every other week, or maybe once every 3 weeks. And then, you know, cost is an issue as well. I mean, this stuff is not cheap. It's not FDA approved for
Weight loss,
obesity.
right.
It's not FDA approved for fatty liver.
Right.
You know, it's for diabetes.
So
And
it's all
you
off
know,
label that
Right.
they're selling it, but they're selling it in, I mean, a lot
Well,
of
yeah.
this.
No, and I think
Right.
you know that's where the the compounded pharmacies can be helpful
Very
and
helpful.
really help people who have a tough time finding this drug or can't get on it because of
And
the cost.
they've had shortages, right? They've had cost
Yes.
issues. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, you name it, they've had everything.
No, and
Yeah.
so look, the drug is definitely you know, people ask me, you know, is this? I said the last time in my specialty I can remember, it was the hepatitis C drugs.
Right.
You know, the Harvoni, et
Saved a
cetera.
lot,
I
yeah.
mean, that was a game changer. That
Yeah.
was revolutionary. And I
Talk
think,
about expensive.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But you know, I mean, it's knocked out Hep C
Yeah,
for
they
the
need
most
it,
part.
yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
so now this is the next stage, in my opinion, like the next big
Yeah.
drug
Yeah.
that has really helped a lot of patients.
Yeah.
I
So-
think so too. I really do.
Yeah, I wanted to go back. What Rob brought up earlier, you know, just about the, you know, the people who are exercising and like anaerobics, things like that. My question is, you know, do you see a difference in people who are taking the drug, who are active, who do exercise, and mainly, you know, I guess just need to lose that 10 or 15 pounds, the sustainability of it? Do you find that it's easier to, you know, phase them off that, or is it pretty much the same?
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely want to wean them and taper them off
Yeah.
slowly because I think, you know, once they're the peptide agonists and start, you know, the way these drugs work is that they are like glucagon like peptides.
Right.
Yep.
And gastric inhibitory peptides. So what polypeptides. So what they do is they mimic these natural, you know, peptides that are flying around, and they, you know, increase insulin and they decrease appetite.
Yeah.
Right.
So if you get an initial starting dose of it, your brain is going to start definitely responding and acting up. So I think once you're on it, it's hard to, and it might take 3 months, maybe
Yeah.
6 months to get to your point. I mean, I have some patients, you know, they lose 7 pounds in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everybody's
Um,
different. Like you said,
Everybody's
there's no-
different.
So, but how do you, so how would, what would you recommend to counteract the potential muscle loss?
So eating multiple times a day.
Mhm.
Okay.
And
so
what I tell patients is like, you know, the whole concept, I mean, Rob knows, I mean, 3 meals a day,
Yeah.
you know, that's not the right way to eat in
Mhm.
general.
Right,
You know,
right.
you want to eat multiple meals throughout the day, kind of large snacks. So I tell people
that's
take your-
why Europeans are.
Yeah.
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 No,
Okay.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
and you know, take your 3 meals, and I tell patients take your 3 meals and
Chop
cut
'em
in
up.
half.
Chop them up.
Yeah, in half and maybe even
Yeah.
more.
Yep.
Portion control for
Yeah.
me is my biggest problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I feel like I can.
Is that
you
a
know,
deep dish pizza?
yeah. It's in the microwave.
You saw that, huh?
I know I struggle with that because if it's on my plate, I want to eat it.
Yeah.
So I know though that when I do control my portion, I could eat 8 times a day.
Yeah.
Think, holy cow, I just ate all
Yeah.
this food all day, but I don't feel bloated. I'm maintaining my weight.
Yeah.
And I feel great.
I mean, most of the world eats the wrong way,
Yeah.
you know,
I would agree.
and so I can say this, like, you know, I'm born in India. I've
Right.
gone back multiple times. And, you know, in Asia, people be eating late.
Yeah.
And I know even
Really
really late. So,
And
you
that's
know,
not-
they wake up fairly early and
Mhm.
they're going to work, maybe a little breakfast, usually no lunch, and then they're back home by 7, 8 o'clock, and they work late, and then they have a large meal.
Yeah.
And then
So
you know,
what are they using for energy all day?
Yeah.
What are they burning?
Yeah,
instead of,
muscle.
Yeah,
They're
exactly.
they're burning
Exactly.
muscle. So
Exactly.
so I think globally, people need to look at, now you can say, oh, look at the Mediterraneans, you know, the
Yeah.
Japanese. I mean, they're look at your foods in general, and then we
Mhm.
can, you know, talking about FODMAPs and you
Yeah.
know, SIBO and all these other things is a whole different topic
Yeah.
regarding bloating and
Yeah, without.
issues like that and bacterial overgrowth. But you know, I think if you look at just how we eat and how most people will try to be like, oh, my dinner's my biggest meal of the day.
Yeah.
And that's the worst thing you could do.
Yeah.
So these drugs will help kind of, you know, tell the brain to, hey, stop. You know,
Yeah.
the other benefit, I'll just tell you, I've noticed this being a liver specialist. I take a lot of people with alcoholism and drinking.
Yeah.
It has gotten rid of their need to drink. It has significantly
I've
lowered.
actually read that. Yeah, yeah.
It has.
That's not going to work for you, Rob.
It has lowered their desire to drink alcohol.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think there's
That's a
some
benefit.
it's a
great
huge benefit. Yeah. I mean, you know, I'm sure the beer and spirit industry is not happy about
Right.
that, but
Yeah.
but I mean, for me as a liver specialist
Yeah.
and taking care of a lot of these patients, I think it's wonderful.
Yeah. Let me ask you, in your opinion, so not your opinion, your professional opinion would be, if someone's not on GLP and, you know, they're potentially in that like phase 3 of
Sure.
liver
Mhm.
function that you were mentioning earlier, what would you recommend to them? Because again, I think people in general, when you say, okay, diet and exercise, they just want to like vomit, walk out of the office and
Yeah.
say it's not happening.
Yeah.
Because it's not only, you know, the task of actually doing these things
Right.
is a
Too
problem.
difficult, yeah.
So what would you say if you were to pick one to start with, to focus on? Would it be change your diet or start exercising? So it's not too overwhelming for
Of course. I mean, I think 60% of weight loss is diet.
Diet,
It's,
right.
it's food.
maybe
food,
high,
plant.
maybe higher than that.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah. It might be 70%.
but
actually.
not
I know.
just weight loss, just health in general.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now,
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think because if you start eating kind of quote the right way,
Right.
and you know, you'll start realizing that, hey, I'm burning off.
Yeah. You're putting fuel, the right fuel.
And
Exactly.
so exercise is sort of icing on the cake.
Right.
And I think, you know, if you look at, you know, large muscle group exercises will help lower, will actually help increase good cholesterol, HDL. So there are a lot of other benefits as well.
Right.
And, you know, helps men's testosterone go up when we're doing heavy muscle
Yep.
lifting and building. So but to answer your question, Tony, I would say first and foremost, focus on your diet.
Mhm.
And look, it's a sensitive topic. You know, I mean, like the word itself, fatty liver, you know, it's like,
Yeah.
oh, wait, what are you saying? I'm fat,
Yeah.
you know, and it's sensitive, you know, I mean, men and women are like, and it's been difficult. And I tell my patients, look, I'm not, and I know it's tough,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, we've
Right.
all struggled with weight gain and have
Right.
family members, et cetera, gone through it. And there's, unfortunately, since COVID, a lot of patients have been depressed, anxiety. And so people will eat more,
Yeah.
you know, and dealing with grief and death and pain, people will turn to food,
Yeah.
you know, and so it's
fear.
and fear.
Right? I mean,
Yeah.
during COVID, right? Yeah.
yeah.
So,
And
exactly.
so we've seen skyrocketing alcohol use,
Yeah,
seen skyrocketing obesity,
Yeah.
and just eating unhealthy. So it's now like, you know, talking with patients and almost counseling them. And I think that's where having a food counselor
Yeah.
and a nutritionist kind of going through it. I'm a data-driven guy,
Yeah.
right? So one thing I love about, you know, what I'm doing with the Metabolics Institute, we're
Yeah.
looking at men's health, but we're looking at weight management, longevity medicine, not just for men, but for hormone replacement specifically for men as we
Yeah.
age, because it's a
Which
place
is so
where we can
important.
turn.
Yeah.
So important, and we don't really talk about
Yeah.
it.
No.
And but you know, the key element, nutrition as well. So they have to go hand in
They
hand.
do. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's,
Well,
it's more of a holistic approach you're taking at
Yeah.
the Institute, which I like.
Yeah.
actually.
And
It's very
I'm
good.
data driven in that we get
Yeah.
blood work,
Yeah.
we look at things, because we have to be able to titrate
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
If you
you
don't
know.
mind, if I can ask one
Yeah.
question, going back to one of your things you mentioned about, you know, just the GLP-1 support after they're off. And I think you mentioned, Tony, what
Yeah.
happens when you take them off, or,
Yeah.
you know, how long they stay on. What have you looked at some of the research on probiotics and, you know, how they affect GLP-1 as well, expression?
There's a lot of data on it. You know,
Yeah.
probiotics,
Yeah.
you know, and I always tell patients, I mean, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry.
Yeah, it's
There
a
are a
big
ton of
one.
probiotics
Right,
out
right.
there, and
Yeah.
some have been great. You
Yeah.
know, some are very healthy, and
You got to
we
make
know-
sure you're buying the right ones.
Well,
too,
buying the right
because
ones,
they
and-
denature. Yeah.
and I, you know, remember what these drugs do, the GLPs, is that they slow down motility.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
So they're making that food last longer.
Mhm.
They're and it's taking a longer time to break down. So that's why people get bloated. They get, I think that we're going to see down the road that it could actually, for some patients, if depending on if they get a really strong effect in the beginning, can probably even lead to some bacterial overgrowth.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So then you got to be careful
Interesting,
about
yeah.
probiotics,
Yeah.
because then probiotics can
Yeah.
actually make the bloating worse.
Yeah.
I always tell patients, I said, look, these are my opinion,
Yeah.
probiotics.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's no disclosure there. There are a bunch of them. There have been a lot of clinical studies about them. Try it for a month.
Yeah.
Don't buy the
See how it works for you.
Don't
Yeah.
buy the Costco 6-month pack.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Buy I'm not sure if they're sold on Costco.
Yeah.
But see how you do.
Costco's calling us tomorrow.
Yeah.
so
Keith,
thanks,
Keith, bleep that out.
Bleep that, yeah.
So let me ask you,
yeah,
what would you, thinking about traditional weight loss medications and things out there and supplements, what would you say the biggest difference is? I mean, in your opinion, because nothing else has ever worked.
Yeah, I mean, I remember growing up, fen and
Yeah,
all these, and then it's like, oh my god.
So just
you know,
stimulants,
like, yeah,
basically, right?
stimulants. I mean, Adderall. I mean, all these.
They tried that in the supplement industry
Yeah.
with ephedrine, if you remember that.
Ephedrine, yeah.
Ephedrine caffeine. It was very similar to
Fen-phen, yeah, and I mean, so what they, like caffeine,
Right.
it's an appetite suppressant.
Yeah.
It makes you poop. It makes your
Yeah.
energy go up,
Yeah.
and you don't feel hungry.
Right.
So I'm seeing that a lot with energy drinks nowadays. People drink 1 or 2 energy drinks. They're
Yeah,
trying to cut down on coffee, and
Yeah.
they're doing 1 or 2 energy drinks, and then they're like, oh, I feel great, like I'm but you're super dehydrated.
Yes, that's the other thing.
Your water.
Yeah, but what it is.
But so I would say that you actually see results.
Yeah.
And that what I like about the GLPs, and we need more clinical studies about this, is the anti-inflammatory.
Right. It's very interesting.
So
Yeah.
I think, my personal opinion is that this will then become like a metformin,
Right.
and become a longevity, anti-aging
Yeah.
sort of, because look, I mean, if it can help decrease inflammation,
Sure.
and it can help decrease cholesterol on top of, cholesterol, which is sky high in the world nowadays.
Yeah.
This could help.
Which also leads to inflammation, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
all fats. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just that's the problem.
And so, but then you got sticky fats, and then atherosclerosis, soft plaque, hard plaque, all these things. So so I think the biggest difference, Tony, is that the anti-inflammatory effect. And the sustainability, I think, that's where we have to say, okay, you got to eat, and you got to at some point know that you're not going to be on this forever, and have that mindset. So I have some patients who say, look, I know my BMI is 28. I got, I've got some high blood pressure. I know I snore. My wife kicks me in the head. I want to lose X amount of weight, and then I'd like to get off of it.
Right.
And I want to have a strategic plan of how we can do that.
Right.
That's a good patient asking.
Yeah.
That.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
No, it's
That's
important. I think, we're in the healthcare industry, and we know that education is super important on things that we do, on the drug delivery systems that we develop.
Yeah.
Is like, we also have to educate the consumer.
100%.
And then when they're educated, they understand what it does and how it works better, and toxicity effects
Right.
of it, the absorption rates that differ from pills.
Bioavailability.
Yeah, bioavailability. All those things play in part to get better user compliance.
Right.
So I guess it's the same.
Yeah. I mean, look, semaglutides, Wegovy, right? The
Yeah.
oral. So, and that's when we're dealing with the bioavailability. So another reason that these the sub-Q injections work is that they're bypassing that, and
They're getting broken down.
and they're broken down, and you're getting a lot better bioavailability,
Right.
Versus the oral.
Right.
I mean, I think there's a lot of companies, as you know, a lot of pharma companies working on oral, because they understand that people don't want to inject themselves.
Right.
Even though it's only once a week, mostly.
Yeah.
They still don't want to do it. There's, issues with that for them. So I think in the near future, you'll see some more GLP-1 products coming out that are oral delivered.
Well, I mean, I think sublingual.
Yes.
I think strips.
Exactly.
I think that would be a great opportunity for people
They're
to
already selling
bypass
them.
that.
Yeah, they're already
Yeah,
having
well,
it there.
yeah, absolutely.
What I'd like to, I mean, obviously we've exhausted the benefits. We all know the benefits. Can you talk a little more about the side effects? I know we kind of glazed over it.
So first and foremost, contraindicated for people with thyroid, MEN. It's a thyroid,
Specific condition.
like an endocrine cancer.
Yeah.
So thyroid cancer, if I always ask patients that if there's a family history of personal history of thyroid cancer, we need a lot more detail of what the exact thyroid cancer is.
Right.
Papillary versus medullary, et cetera. Number two, if you have underlying constipation, whether it's chronic constipation or IBS constipation.
I was going to ask, how about like Crohn's and IBD? Can they take it, or is it?
Yeah,
you know,
I mean,
it's not contraindicated.
No, yeah, there's no contraindication
Mm.
for, now, it can slow motility down
More, right,
so people
Bloating.
who are, they get severe discomfort with chronic constipation or IBS.
Right.
I always warn them it's not contraindicated, but just
Right.
be mindful that your constipation could get worse.
Yeah.
Acid reflux, a big one.
That's what I've
because
heard,
it slows everything down. And just so everyone knows, the data has shown you need to. So if I do a procedure, patients need to stop the dose before.
Okay,
So, for
right.
example, if you give yourself a shot every Monday, and you have a procedure for endoscopy, colonoscopy, or whatever procedure, dental work, anything, or you're going to get sedated on Wednesday, you have to skip that Monday dose.
Got it. Well, okay.
Because
I just had my colonoscopy a couple weeks ago, and they asked me,
Yeah.
like multiple times.
Did you stop any GLP-1s?
But the reason is because there have been some reports about aspiration,
Right.
Yeah.
and
Right.
people
Well,
you get aspiration pneumonia because you got your foods
Full, yeah.
full in there.
Yeah.
And we've learned this over the years with patients being on these drugs.
So it's 1 week. It's a couple of days. Well,
Yeah,
5,
I mean,
6 days
if you
before.
different surgeons,
Yeah,
so it definitely 1 week.
Yeah.
Some surgeons and procedures will require 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So I've
Yeah.
seen anywhere, but we do it 1 week.
Yeah.
But I've seen it up to 3 weeks before.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So the other thing I was going to ask is, where do you see the future of these drugs? Are there different hormones that they're synthesizing into these new drugs, or
Yeah.
what's your outlook?
I know they're looking. So right now, so semaglutide is one peptide, tirzepatide is 2,
Right.
and now they're working on another one.
Yeah, it starts with an L, right, or something. I can't.
Yeah,
remember.
it's
That's how it is.
well, there's Retta,
Yeah, Retta's-
Right.
Retta, and so that's looking at the same 2 peptides plus glucagon.
Yeah.
So
Oh, it's liraglutide.
Yeah.
if that or dulaglutide.
well, there's retatrutide. Yeah. So, and Eli Lilly's working on that. What I would love to
Well,
see.
I think they're trying to go for a longer half-life too, from what I
Yeah.
understand.
Well,
So,
Trulicity
yeah.
has been out there a while.
Yeah.
right?
Trulicity
Yeah, it
been
says
out
it's
for a
a
while too. Yeah.
So, what I would love, and I know I'm sure the companies are working on this, is
Yeah.
to get more FDA approval
They are listening.
and, to get it for fatty liver,
Yeah.
for even alcohol
Yeah.
Yeah.
abuse.
Yeah.
But what realistically, what are those time frames? I mean, I know clinical studies
Yeah.
we both know that those things can take like 10 years.
And a
mean,
lot
look,
of money.
yeah, I mean, look, but
that's
if you're-
why
but if-
off-label they're okay with it right
Yeah,
now. But
right.
I
And
agree
with
with
compound pharmacy.
Yeah,
It's hard
yeah.
to.
Well, off-label, but remember, off-label means not covered by insurance.
right, not covered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that means, unfortunately,
more expensive. With
more
a brand.
expensive. And
A brand.
for most people,
Yeah. Yeah.
you only get 4 doses,
Yeah.
a month.
Yeah.
So it's once a week. So it adds up.
It's
I mean,
expensive,
it's
yeah.
very expensive. So
Mhm.
I'd love for larger approval and FDA approval for all these other diseases, so we can help more people.
Yeah, and there's ways to do that, especially when you're looking at retrospective studies, right? I mean, that you should be able to pull a lot of that data points,
Yeah.
on these different indications,
Right.
Because it's out there. Every doctor knows it.
Yeah.
So the FDA is like, come on, you already have a safety tolerance.
Yeah.
So now you look at the retrospective data, and you should be able to, get that approved a lot quicker than starting with a new drug.
Right.
Right.
No, I totally agree. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I think the future is bright. I think we're going to learn more about the anti-inflammatory effects. We're probably going to learn more about some side effects that we didn't know about.
course, yeah.
I mean, if you look at the side effects, pancreatitis is one. I've not had a patient, knock on wood, luckily, that has had pancreatitis. So, you ask yourself, I mean, as a doctor, I ask myself, well, this patient has had a history of pancreatitis, whether it's gallstone or alcohol. Does that predispose them to potentially have pancreatitis?
Oh, yeah.
If they started,
Right.
versus so, and hopefully the answer is no.
Yeah, yeah.
But we have to think about these things.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of side effects listed. I mean, there are low incidences, right?
Yeah.
They're not very high.
Yeah.
For most of them.
Exactly.
The main ones are like you mentioned, discomfort, stomach bloating.
Yeah, bloating, which is because and
Nauseousness,
that's all
diarrhea.
related to
Yeah.
the motility, slowing down the
Exactly.
motility.
Yeah,
And
and that's
so
what
you-
it's supposed to do.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's doing what it's supposed to.
Yeah, it's funny because I think of it almost as though this drug is making you act like you have gastroparesis and you're an uncontrolled diabetic.
Right. Right.
Because that, unfortunately, with the patients with hemoglobin A1C of 9, 10, 11, 12, they'll get neuropathy.
That's
plus,
pretty high.
and then they'll get the gastroparesis, so they're nauseous.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Which is not fun.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to take a few minutes to kind of talk about what we do as just normal guys, kind of like making sure
We don't become obese.
we don't become
or
obese.
avoid, yeah.
And I wrote a hack list.
Okay.
So I'm gonna go through this list, and you're gonna tell me, like, add to it or say no, that doesn't really work. But I picked like 10 things
There's
that
a buzzer on the other side. You just buzz.
Just buzz me.
Yeah.
what people are hearing, from their friends, their doctors, online, and then add if you think something should be added or it doesn't work so much. Number one, well, let me start from I'll start from number one. Prioritize protein. So I'm not saying keto or anything. I'm just saying, like, from what I know, my body works like a machine when I keep my carbohydrates like around 50 or under grams.
Right.
I do have GI issues, as you know. And is that true statement? I mean, overall,
Not for everybody though, right?
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
so
everybody's different.
I think that's, Rob.
Your institute, actually.
Yeah.
You should talk about how you kind of know what people should be eating.
Yeah.
Right. Because that's really important. That's
Yeah.
a great question. Because
Yeah,
a lot
yeah,
of people are
yeah.
hearing that high protein is the way to go if you want to lose weight, but that's not always true.
it's like the new trend. It's everybody's
Well,
talking about high
You
protein.
need to have the right balance.
right balance. Yeah.
Right,
It's about, like, carbohydrates, fats, and proteins.
Mhm.
And that can move depending on if you're trying to be a bodybuilder versus trying to just, be an ultra marathon runner, or just trying to be overall healthier.
Mhm.
So there needs to be the right mix, and that mix is variable, and
Exactly.
so that's where, now overall, we know carbs, sugar, diabetes, pre-diabetes, sky high,
Right.
and so I feel like, probably 60+% patients will have some form of pre-diabetes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think, when you look at that, yes, you want to be more protein focused
Right.
in general overall versus carb focused, but you still need carbs.
Yeah. So if you're someone who works out a lot, or you're lifting weights, and I'm going back to what I learned early on is that those carbs turn into glycogen.
Yeah.
Right. And if the glycogen stays in your blood, that's not good. Turns into visceral fat, I believe.
And inflammation.
Right. So if you're working out and you're using those carbohydrates, I would say the prioritizing of protein isn't as important in a sense, where you're using the carbohydrate. You still need the protein to gain muscle and maintain, but it's not something that you have to worry about if you're burning those carbs.
So it's about being active, right?
Correct.
So that's where it comes out. But does the average person work out?
No.
Or do they have a training program?
Right.
They don't need to go to the gym. Some people use their own body weight, calisthenics,
Yeah.
yoga, Pilates, so I think having some plan. Now, Grant, look, I won't lie. Most doctors, our schedules are crazy. I'm coming straight from procedures here, and so every day is different.
Excuses.
I saw you doing push-ups out there.
I know I did. I was
Right.
lifting that up.
Yeah.
But even though in a chaotic schedule, there's some order where you can at least know
Fit something in.
whether it's in your desk or just walking. For us, luckily for me, we walk around a lot from hospital to, but lifting weights, if that means I have to wake up at 4 a.m. because I can't do it at 6 a.m. or doing it at 10 at night, once the kids are asleep.
Yeah.
But
two young kids. So that's why. Yeah.
But to go back to your point, yes, I think if you're exercising and you're burning, then you don't need to be as focused because you're going to be burning it off anyway.
Right.
If you're in like, trying to build muscle,
Mm-hmm.
then, Rob can tell you.
Yeah.
Or you can just buy extra small shirts.
Very powerful dryer.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to move through this. I want to move through this list pretty quickly
that's
because we're getting to the top of the hour. Number 2, obviously hydrate. critical for, but just name a couple things of,
I tell people baseline now, because remember, for bowel movements also you need water, right? I always like to tell them, like, imagine you're going down that slippery, that water park, but if you don't have water and that you're gonna screech down that
burns,
and that, so we need water from.
I'm going to use that analogy.
I love
Yeah,
that
you like that?
Yeah,
Yeah, everybody can
stealing it.
visualize that
Yeah,
because they've had that screeching going down those amusement parks. But I mean, I'm talking from the bowel standpoint, fiber, good bowel movements. That's a critical part. So I tell people at least half of your body weight in ounces, up to 50 to 60% of your body weight in ounces of water.
Okay.
And then for every caffeine or alcohol beverage or energy drink, you need another 1-to-1 ratio on top of that. And then if you're exercising, more on top of that. Yeah. So whether it's a brisk walk around the neighborhood or you're at the gym 2 hours, just, sweating buckets and be one of those cool guys who carry the whole gallon of milk, but fill it with water.
Exactly.
Rob's like, but water, I mean, Tony, in my opinion, I don't know the rest of your list, but this is
wait.
But this is a critical point that most people do not drink. I thought my dad was a camel for most of my life. I don't think I've ever seen him drink water.
Well, look, I'm one of those guys because I don't drink a lot of water, and I have kidney stones. I've been having kidney stones since 1998, a uric acid stone. So it has, it's all about dehydration.
So far he has everything.
So I've been lucky because I finally found the potassium citrate and it's helping me out. But it's a huge thing for me. It seems like no matter how much water I drink, it doesn't matter. But trust me, guys, no one out there wants kidney stones.
Yeah, I mean, it's like delivering a baby through your penis.
Yeah.
Well, when
I'm not going to touch that one, but all right.
When I was married and we were at the Lamaze class, the first class, the teacher said, childbirth is very painful, and none of you men know anything about this type of pain unless you've had a kidney stone.
Yeah.
And I raised my hand and all the women just looked at me like I was evil.
I know. Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
But it is, you definitely don't want to, and I know there's protein and other types of calcium and other type of stones.
Yeah.
But
no, I mean, that's why I made that comment of delivering, baby, because it is that painful.
Yeah.
It is, I mean, and
I have like 80 children by now.
Yeah, exactly. Congratulations, by the way.
All right. So number 3, mindful eating. I think we've kind of talked about that a lot, but I think it goes to your point about, when you're prescribing the drugs and people are weaning off them, in a sense, like being able to listen to your body's hunger and fullness cues, things like that, and to take those for sustainability, so you don't gain all the weight back.
Right. Mindful eating, like we talked about, multiple meals a day.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're only eating 2 meals a day, you're going to eat that full plate when it's there, right? And you're going to overeat, and then you have to, obviously you're eating late at night.
Well, the issue is people, like, when you go to eat, it's like you're almost saying like, oh, I shouldn't eat. They think eating multiple times is bad. Like you're gonna gain weight,
and I think that's the misconception.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely, I agree with that. I think that's the biggest hurdle, is educating people that no, multiple meals is good. That doesn't mean you have to have multiple, cheesecake meals. They're very big portions, cheesecake.
Yeah.
But you take small meals, like you said, cut them up and do 6 or 7.
Right. And I think this comes to intermittent fasting.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if it was on your list.
I love it. I do it every day.
Yeah. I mean, and so remember, intermittent fasting, people think, okay, well, I'm only eating 1 meal or 2 meals, so my second meal is going to be huge.
Right.
Because so I think, and the data has shown people do lose muscle mass when they intermittent fast. So almost like these GLPs almost make you intermittent fast without saying intermittent fasting because you're not hungry.
Yeah. Well, to me, it depends on how you define intermittent fasting, right? For me, I usually don't eat after 6 o'clock at night.
Yeah. And
then I don't eat again until about 10 in the morning. I wake up and I'll do my workout and whatever. Actually, I'm lying. I'll do my protein shake around 8.
Yeah.
But, and then I do multiple meals throughout the day, as you
Yeah.
know. So that's, that
Well,
12-hour window or 14 hours.
Yeah, and I wouldn't call
Yeah,
that the
yeah.
typical concept of intermittent
Right,
fasting.
right.
So most people will say, okay, I'll have one meal, first meal at 11, and then another meal at 7 or 8 p.m. So
Yeah.
they pretty much skip one of the quote 3 meals. They're not snacking.
Okay, that's their intermittent
Yeah,
fasting. Yeah,
so
I have a different.
I think most doctors I know already intermittent fast.
Yeah, I think
because
so.
we usually
No
don't.
time.
No
Yeah,
choice,
I mean
yeah.
we don't eat lunch. I tend to have a huge breakfast and try and teach my daughters that breakfast is the most important meal, because not only you need it for energy, for brain cells, for movement,
Especially
exercise,
brain cells, yeah.
and muscles,
Yeah.
but also if you're gonna
Metabolism.
you're gonna burn it off.
Yeah, metabolism.
Right.
Versus
Early.
eating a big dinner where you're not moving as much.
Right.
And I don't consider a brisk a nice stroll around the neighborhood after eating exercise.
Right.
No.
Right. Okay.
I agree.
Number 4 and 5, choose whole foods, which I think we kind of touched on, of unprocessed foods, fruits, vegetables, lean proteins, whole grains.
Mediterranean diet. I mean,
Mediterranean
if you
diet,
look at
yeah.
the data, Mediterranean and vegetarian,
Yeah.
you kind of mix them together, maybe add a little bit more vegetables to the
Yeah.
Mediterranean diet. I mean,
agree.
that is, the best diet.
What about little, not off topic, but a little segue on, back when the Atkins was starting and the South Beach diet, and there was another one, eat right for your blood type.
I remember that.
Yeah. Do you see any results in people finding out what their blood type is and eating? Because I remember for me it was like, you can only eat turkey and fish and a few other things, and I tried it for a while. Like, man, I'm functioning well,
I don't know. I don't know if I'm a big believer at the blood type. I mean, I think, it comes
It's
to a
good to
bigger,
know your blood type.
No, I think it's, I'm B plus.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I mean, it's important to know your blood type. It's hard to say, that specifically. I think a lot of that comes down with aging, hormone changes, and food sensitivities.
Yes.
I think as,
Right.
I've seen people, their sensitivities
that's
to
probably what
food
it is.
change.
Yeah. Limited processed foods and sugary drinks. Rob, stop drinking your
My
energy
water.
drink.
Oh, my energy drink. Yeah.
Okay, this one, we talked about this last week when we were talking about stress. Get enough sleep.
Oh, yeah.
I hate this so much because, again, it's like people, just make sure you get 7 to 9 hours of sleep, and like, okay, well, it's easy for you to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But quickly, what would you recommend? Like, just something you would tell one of your patients if they're saying I'm having trouble sleeping. What would be the first thing you would say without medication?
Right. Well, first and foremost, look at, stress level, eating habits, this thing.
Stay off the
Yeah,
phone.
This
yeah,
thing,
yeah, yeah.
I mean, no more Instagram.
Yeah.
At least
later.
an hour or 2 hours before.
Yeah,
maybe,
I mean,
right?
I think we need to learn how to unwind and
Yeah.
unplug.
Unplug is
Yeah.
key.
I think unplug is critical. I mean, we have a rule.
and we all have trouble with that, the three of
Yeah.
us, because we're workaholics.
Yeah.
So I get it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's tough because if
You're on
on
call,
call, and so for me, I mean, but trying to stay off of the Instagram and the
Yeah.
Facebook,
And
or
I think-
TikTok.
I
People still
think
use
the
Facebook. I do, but
yeah, I mean, it's a huge problem for everyone nowadays because it's almost like it's part of your lifestyle.
yeah,
But I would say also I've noticed I stopped eating, like, I think Rob was saying this earlier. I stopped eating at like between 4:30 and 6.
Yeah.
Unless I get home late, I'll eat something, but that's really helped me.
I mean, I tell people no eating 3 hours
Yeah.
before you go to bed.
Yeah.
So
get acid reflux sometimes. when you do that,
yeah.
right?
I mean, so for acid reflux, so 3 hours, maybe
yeah.
even 4.
Yeah.
I mean, for people on GLPs, it could be even longer.
Yeah.
But I think we need to have a wind down period. Like, we all need to be like, okay, I don't watch the news anymore.
Right, right.
I
Yeah.
mean, we just, in general, just like when you really want to wind down, that is a big part of it. Sleeping aids, there's a lot out there. But I think, meditation, deep breathing exercises,
Yeah. Stress is on the
green
list.
noise, white noise, there are other things that you could do
Yeah.
to kind of just relax, and just let your body relax. I think all of that is
Do
going to be
something
important.
crazy, like read a book.
Yeah.
How about
Yeah,
that?
I know.
Yeah.
Or something, I don't know.
Yeah, I
Right?
know.
So-
Well, so
Yeah.
managing stress is on here, number 7. Like you said, we did talk about this a little last week. Meditation, yoga, deep breathing, the type of stuff. I use a machine, that has the sound of the ocean.
Yeah.
Those
Yeah.
things kind of
Green noise is great.
Yeah.
You just go to YouTube and
Yeah.
they have all these green noise, and
Yeah.
there are a lot of apps out there as well.
Yeah, I use one
And
too.
it just has like a rhythmic sound
Yeah.
that, just helps.
And there are
Without
people
doubt.
out there saying right now, I've tried it all, doesn't work.
Yeah.
And I'm in that boat. You just have to kind of, I think, switching things up, trying new things. And look, documentation, I think, is huge, because if you're just doing things and you forget what you did, you had a good night's sleep, you're not going to know what to do again.
Yeah.
So it's good to maybe go a week and write down what you're eating,
Mhm.
potentially where your stress level's at, drink, what your hydration, all those things you're talking about, to understand what you do the next week and the results you get, and see if it repeats. And
Right. I mean, I think the other big issue is snoring.
Yes.
Sleep apnea,
Sleep apnea.
is a
Yeah.
very big issue that we don't know.
Yeah.
And so when somebody wakes up all of a sudden, it's because they're literally stopped breathing.
Yeah.
yeah,
They're gasping for air,
right.
and their brain is not getting any oxygen.
Yeah.
So, and then you wake up because your body tells
Sure.
you, wake up or you're going to die.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that is a critical part that
Way
we're
to
forgetting
lighten up the
about.
mood.
Yeah, I know. As my wife said, don't be myself,
Don't be yourself, yeah.
when we go to parties. But, but no, so everybody should get a sleep apnea study.
Yeah.
If you have a significant other next to you, he or she can say, hey, you're snoring.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And that can be anatomic,
Yeah.
or it could be gaining weight, etc. But there could be a lot of things that, we need to just be mindful about.
Yeah, for sure. So track your progress, which I just mentioned. Regular physical activity. I think, again, it's one of those things where it's easy to say, like, you get up and take a walk, but these things are essential in your life, and you just have to find a way to do it. But I think those things are gateways to potentially improving your diet, potentially getting into the gym and walking on the treadmill. So I think it's important that we have some physical activity.
Yeah.
I
I think taking that first step
Yeah.
is
Yeah,
important,
without
and
doubt.
then trying your best to get a regimen.
Yeah.
Now,
Routine
May-
is important.
Yeah.
It really
routine,
is.
yeah,
If
and
you
it
don't-
may not be the same every
No,
week,
no.
but at least something.
Well, what we say, I know we used to say, like, in the early days about the gym and getting through the soreness as well. You haven't broken through the ceiling yet,
Yeah.
right? So the first 2-3 weeks are really tough. Once you break through that ceiling, it's almost like your body's craving that activity.
Yeah.
And then your body's like this internal clock now of you got to do it, and
Yep.
it's different. So yeah, to your point, I think everybody out there, don't be discouraged. Like, you just have to get through that first week or two.
Yeah, you
or,
gotta make it a habit. Right?
yeah, you gotta push yourself. And then the last thing on the list is obviously seek professional guidance. So whatever that is, therapist, fitness coach, life coach, doctor, anything that can help you get to that next level. And this is the thing about Project Y, that I want to talk about, is the stigma with men. It's a huge thing, because the way Rob and I kind of formulated Project Y was like, letting other guys know that this is not just it's not easy to do.
Yeah.
Right? So don't feel bad if you're going for these tests. Do it, right?
Yeah, I think it's exactly what you said earlier, right?
Yeah.
Men don't like to talk about it.
Yeah.
They hide from it, really. And they're not proactive about it, are they?
Right.
They're not. They kind of hide from it. They put
Yeah.
their head in the sand a lot. of
Well,
times.
I mean, I think they don't know where to go.
That's the problem, yeah.
A lot of allopathic doctors may not know how to approach this. If you go to an endocrinologist,
Right.
so because it is I like to use the word performance medicine,
Right.
and it's performance, not just
Yeah.
performance,
No,
but
indeed.
also
Overall.
but
Yeah.
overall performance,
Yes.
because it's all related, because everything affects our overall health, the hydration, the sleep, the muscle, but as we age, testosterone drops.
Mhm.
And so we have to look at these ways of trying to see if we can get it back up in a safe manner.
Mhm.
And because we have to watch out for prostate cancer,
Yeah.
we have to watch out for family history of other cancers. We have to watch out, so these are things that we have to monitor. That's why anybody who's seeing a physician, or a clinic or an institute needs to make sure that they have some sort of data-driven approach.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I would
yeah.
agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let me say, we're going to wind down here tonight. I want to thank Dr. Rahul Dixit for his time. Excellent information. You educated a lot of us tonight, including Rob, which is hard to do. But appreciate your time.
Absolutely.
Definitely have you on the show again and
Absolutely,
get a little
yeah.
more granular with some of the things. There's so much. There's so many doors that we can open with this.
Yeah.
And I think it's worth talking about. But I want to thank everyone for listening tonight. Of course, our CJ Productions, Keith and Lindsay, thank you for everything you guys are doing behind the scenes. And please check out our socials, our YouTube channel at the Ycast. You can watch the video. It should be uploaded by tonight. You can replay it. A like and subscribe would be greatly appreciated. Instagram, you can check us out at Project Y Now. Facebook, Project Y. LinkedIn, Project Y Now. And TikTok, Project Y Now. So thank you, folks, once again. And we will see you December 11th will be the next podcast for the Ycast. And look for our socials for the subject matter. And we'll see you guys. Thank you.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy
too.
Thanksgiving.
All right. Take care, guys.
Thanks. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.